And we are live. So, welcome to episode 187 of An American Werewolf in New Jersey. I am the American Werewolf. In the house tonight, we've got John K. Alvarez, who has finally arrived. It took you fucking long enough. And we've got Eric from Hey Internet Eric here. Thank you both for joining us on this particular occasion. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thanks for
Yeah, always. So, there are a lot of first contact movies out there. I think the three of us together probably are fans of most, if not all of them, in one way or another. You've got films like Independence Day. You've got films like, I guess Men in Black would be considered one. You've got The Day the Earth Stood Still. You've got Contact with Jodie Foster, which is a different kind of movie. We have to go to them. That sort of thing. We've got Close Encounters of the Third Kind, one of the all-time greats.
Yep.
Can we think of any others off the top of our heads? Pretty much, and we've got like Star Trek First Contact, but that's not really a First Contact film.
Would War of the Worlds count?
Sure, War of the Worlds. We've got Signs.
Starman.
Starman's another one. Sure, yeah. There are tons of First Contact films out there, but many of them are kind of exterior sorts of films. You know, they're action films or, disaster films or, this kind of thing, so on and so forth. This film, by contrast, I think is very interior. It's a very internal sort of introspective kind of thing that's happening because there's really no action. It's about an alien civilization coming to Earth and attempting to teach us their language, attempting to open not even so much a dialogue, they're attempting to teach us the way that they communicate.
Right.
You've got a lot of principles in here. You've got principles about time, the way time works. You've got memory. You've got language. All these different things happening at the same time. And I think for me personally, this is the best First Contact movie I've ever seen. And we're talking Denis Villeneuve's Arrival. So if you guys are ready to go, shall we get it going?
Let's get going.
Please do.
No time like the president. So there's one thing I would say before we get started, which is that this movie is based on a book by Ted Chiang called, it's a short story, it's only about 45 pages, called Story of Your Life, which is kind of about the Amy Adams character relating to her daughter what the story of her life was. While being sort of in the past, being able to bridge that spectrum now in the way of in her understanding of time. Eric, like we normally do, what were your impressions? Because you're a first-time viewer.
Yeah.
You're a first-time viewer of this, seeing it for the first time. What was your impression of Arrival?
I went into this totally blind. You know, I had never heard of the movie. I mean, I had to confirm with you that it wasn't the fucking Charlie Sheen movie from the 90s. You know what I mean? With
you
aliens.
automatically knew that was not the case.
I know. But, you know, you do throw the curveballs every now and then.
Every now and again.
I really dug this, and here's why. It wasn't a shoot 'em up.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know what I don't know if this is the right way to word it, but this movie is like 2 hours long. I didn't think it dragged at all, and not that much happens per se.
Mm-hmm.
But I was so enthralled of the story and where it could possibly go.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't wait to see how it ends, and then me and you texted a little bit about the ending, Mike. So, but
yeah,
I was very, very, very pleased from beginning to end with this movie.
Mm-hmm.
You just saw the ending for the first time about an hour ago.
Yes.
It is a hell of an ending.
Yes.
So we'll go to John. What did you think of this movie? I take it it's not your first time seeing it.
No, as a matter of fact, the best way I could describe it is actually a conversation I had with my father many, many years ago. And because my father was an avid science fiction reader
Mine too.
and movie buff.
Mm-hmm.
And as he put it, he always said there's two types of science fiction movies because people he feels confuse science fiction and science fantasy and mixes the genre. He says Star Wars is science fantasy. 2001 A Space Odyssey is science fiction, as he put it, because it's basically using our mathematics, our knowledge that we have to tell this story that may be false, but could be true eventually, type deal is how he described it. And I put The Arrival that way. When I first saw The Arrival, it was on cable. I didn't get to see it in the movie theater. Way back in the days of HBO and Showtimes and Skinamax and things like that. And when it was done, like I had the double HBO thing where it was, you know, you got the East Coast time and then like a few channels down.
3 hours later.
And I waited to watch it again, type deal, because it had that kind of effect on me. One of the things, Mike, that you were talking about the movie that I found a lot is it's not just language, it's communicating.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's that sense of communication, even within the Earthlings themselves. Like, I'm glad you mentioned Close Encounters of the Third Kind, because when Close Encounters came out, and I was quite literally, I think, 12 when that movie came out, I got to see it in a movie theater. These were the same questions that people were talking about that I heard when they were talking about Arrival, because it's the way they presented the aliens. It wasn't shoot 'em up.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, I love movies like that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, one of my all-time favorite movies is, and you could consider it a first contact movie, it's going to be Episode 200, Ridley Scott's Alien.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a science fiction movie. It's science fiction horror, but it's a science fiction movie about first contact experience, which is as awful as, you know, humanly possible.
Right.
But there's a spectrum in terms of these first contact. You have something more fun, like Independence Day.
Right.
You know, which in no way, shape, or form, you watch the whole world blow up and you're just kind of keep chewing your popcorn.
Or, you know, you can go the kiddie route, E.T., you know?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. There's a full spectrum of these. But I think like all of the very best horror movies, the best sci-fi movies are the ones that are rooted in very human problems.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like Hereditary was.
Right.
This just is. And this is rooted in those types of problems and questions, which are, you know, if you knew your child was going to die before the child was born, would you continue to go through with that for the experience, for the experience of that love? You know, would you choose to have a relationship if you knew before it even gets started? And yeah, this is a little more realistic because this happens all the time. You knew it was going to tank. You know, not just tank, but tank horrifically. You know, would you choose, you know, that now if you knew that the future contained pain and heartbreak. I mean, because losing a child will ruin your life. Not just a bad breakup. Losing a child will ruin your life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not married. I'm not a parent. We have one parent and one married person in this panel. But my understanding is that marriages may not survive the loss of a child necessarily. It's just too much of a strain. So they're asking a lot of in depth and very intense kind of questions.
That's still a question. Like I said, I finished this hour ago. I'm still trying to process that question. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I can't imagine a life without my daughter. You know what I mean?
Right.
But the thing is, when you're a parent, it's your, air quotes, job to protect that child, to protect them from any type of harm, misfortune. So, you got the two choices: the life without the child, or the very short life with the child. But you also have the fact that you are going to want, because this child has some type of cancer, to less effect. So you also will have to watch that child suffer. And you can tell this is like a long going process, because the last time we see the child, no hair, because of, I'm assuming, chemo and stuff like that. So you're watching this child suffer, through your lifetime. Could you put yourself through that? And that's something I can't answer, because like I said, I can't imagine my life without my kid. But seeing her suffer and knowing that
she's going to suffer. That
she's going to suffer. And then when, because we've already pretty much said what happens, knowing, your spouse, that this spouse is going to lose a child as well. And then what causes the divorce or the breakup, whatever, is when you have to tell them.
Yeah.
So you kept this from them for a long time, because there's a scene where he says, "Do you want to make a baby?" Right then and there, you could have said, this is what happens.
Yeah.
But nothing was said. So it's just like 3 lives were ruined by one decision.
Eric, let me hit you with a follow-up question, and then John, I'll get you in here too. Did she do a terrible thing? Because I remember I saw this movie for the first time on a flight. I was on a flight going somewhere, I can't remember where, and it was almost like a Midsommar kind of reaction. I was like, fuck this movie, man. I'm like, she's just fucking awful. And the movie kind of, and like, there are all kinds of documentaries that go with this, and I watched it, and she said she really wanted to thank, Amy Adams wanted to thank Jeremy Renner, because he clearly, in almost every way in this film, is the subordinate. And she's like, a lot of men would not have allowed themselves to be, placed in a position like this. He's always playing catch up. And then you see, in the brief span, of the interpersonal relationship that they have and they're going to have, he's never going to catch up. And so that's my question, Eric, and then John. Did she do it? She decided for everybody. So is that a terrible thing?
See, see. That's the thing is, if you're not a parent, it's hard to decide, because you foster parents, what have you. I personally don't think so, as of right now, because unless you're a parent, you don't know what it's like to love a child, be loved by a child. Especially a child that age. And we know we've seen all, how this child was at least 12, give or take, when she passed. You know what I mean? Because we did the whole.
I think she makes it. No, she makes it into like early 20s or something.
Okay, even more so. It's just like that's 20 years of loving a child, being loved by a child, and again, that what if type of thing. But as a parent right now. No, she did not do the wrong. She did not do the wrong thing. I think her choice was a positive choice because that's still 20 years of good.
She chose life.
Yes.
However fragile it may have been, that's what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, John, what do you got?
Well, it's not even choosing just life. It's we're concentrating on the bad memories or the bad experiences of the cancer and everything else.
Right.
There's also, excuse my American slang, shitload of good memories that were there too. And it's always
okay. So wait, let me jump in there for a second because what I'm saying is not that she chose it, and I'm not talking about the kid, but did she do it? Because maybe I'm not being specific enough, and I'm not trying to push people into a corner.
Sure.
But did she do a terrible thing by not telling Jeremy Renner?
I think
he's a parent too,
and I agree.
That's my question. Did she do a terrible thing by not disclosing what was going to happen when she?
No, she did not, because he still had those 20-something years of good as a father.
Right.
Okay.
So I do not think so, no.
And he could easily be angry, just like anyone would be angry at a loss of a child or a loss of something. I mean, the last 7 years of my father's life, I was his main caretaker. Well, not his main caretaker, but I'm going to drove him all the doctor's appointments, was up with him, especially towards the end. And after it was done, I had several friends of mine that were actors because my career was kind of shifted and went into a different position. And he turned around, and one of them turned around and said, well, there you go. I bet you regretted that moment, or you bet you regretted that decision. And I turned around and actually stopped and paused for a second and said, no, I'd do it again. Because of all, and there were some very rough times. But there were also times my father and I laughed harder than we ever laughed in our life together. So there was, I mean, I remember the one time the doctor telling me, this is it. He's going to be around for about 5-6 weeks.
Right.
And I was sitting there and it was starting to get to me. And my dad, of all people, reached out and touched me on the face, which he never did. And with the stroke, he had a hard time talking. His mind was there, but his speech pattern was off. So when he spoke clearly, he was concentrating as hard as he could. And he looked at me because I was looking at rain clouds coming. And he said, ignore that. That's coming.
Yeah.
Nothing we can do about it. And he pointed to the sun. We're enjoying this now. And that was about 6 weeks before he passed away. And that was one of the last few clear things. So the point about it is her not telling Jeremy Renner, you could say that by withholding that information, she could be cruel and malicious. But it's like, what Eric said, he also got to enjoy it. He also had those moments. The first Christmas with her, all these special moments there. And as sad as it is at the end of her life, eventually the good will come through.
And the thing is, we don't know when exactly, what age she did pass.
Yeah.
But she looked maybe to be like 9 or 10 when she asked the question, why does daddy look at me different? Because mommy told him something, a secret or whatever. And that's what. So he still had plenty of time afterwards of being told to still have time to enjoy as a father.
Right.
He just knew that he had this limited amount of time. So maybe, lack of a better term, he could up the ante of doing things with her and making more special moments. So I don't think it was a bad thing.
Here's my take on it.
Okay.
I think that I understand why she did it, but I think she did the wrong thing.
Okay.
She was not. It wasn't her place to choose for him, and you understand why she did it. But I think it's doing the wrong thing for the right reason. It's not a black and white thing, and obviously there's no malice in it.
Exactly.
But I think he had a right to know.
Right.
I believe he had a right to know and to have decided for himself. For her to choose for everybody, and it's funny because the way this movie works is that eventually everybody is going to learn to see things the way that she has started to see them.
Mm-hmm.
So this inability to get the jump on somebody per se is not going to be an option soon, because everybody is going to be able to see into the future, because it's not some open-ended kind of thing. It's fixed.
Right.
But it was just ironic to me that the first use, the ability to look into the future, was somebody sort of pulling the wool over somebody else's eyes who couldn't see it.
Right.
You know, and it was a very human thing. That's why I got the human sign in. It was a very human thing. But yeah, it was a bit of a stretch. It was a bit of a that was a bit of a bridge. So I mean, the movie itself is just, it's fantastic. These aliens, they come down there. This idea that the future is not open, like everything has already occurred. It's like one big block, one big cinder block. And so if we're in one particular point in the cinder block, we can see everything behind us, but we think that all these other things are undecided, when in truth they're not.
Right.
I just thought that was a fascinating concept. I'd never really heard of anything like that before. And the effects, the creature effects.
I love the look of the creatures, because you don't, even when she is close up to them, you still don't really get a good look at them.
Right.
It's very surreal. It's a very surreal.
To me, they looked like if you took your hand and pointed it towards the ground. You know what I mean? So you had all the fingers. Because what do they call them?
Abbott and Costello.
Right, but like heptapods, because heptapods, like for 7 legs or something like that. They look menacing. They look scary, especially with all the clouds and the smoke. Right, like that's a great fucking shot. You know what I mean? You think this is a horror movie? Yeah, with that the way that is, and the way they communicate. Like I love how their language, I guess you would say, is like black smoke that forms these shapes. And one of my favorite, there's one possible jump scare in this whole fucking movie is when she places her hand up and then it mimics her. But what I love about it, she doesn't flinch one bit. She's so enthralled in these new life forms. And she's so, into the fact that she knows it's just mimicking her. Because when this movie started out, like I said, I went in totally freaking blind. I thought it was going to be like Independence Day, because it starts just like Independence Day. You know what I mean? Literally, sirens happen. There's no one in the classroom because she's a teacher, college professor or whatever. No one's there. Everybody's on their fucking phone. And then when she calls somebody out, the person just says, "Can you turn on the news?"
I thought it was hysterical because she didn't know what was going on.
Exactly.
The news had been on for a while from what you can, and she was still going about her day.
And the way it's edited totally throws you off, because you think the reason why she's not paying attention to anything on TV because she's still processing her daughter.
Right.
Everything that happens to her.
Right.
And I loved that fake out. It was so well done, because it was sprinkled out throughout the movie. She's always having these dreams about her daughter or this failed marriage and stuff like that. And the things that they say, there's, before she goes in to make first initial contact, are you pregnant? So, no, she's not. So she just had a child. She's not going to have another child, type of thing. Right. Then we have a dropped line earlier. You were married. You know what I mean? I know why my husband left me. You were married. So it's so well done that you, in my opinion, you have to really be paying attention. You got to be good on your Scooby-Doo shit to figure out that all these things with her family have already happened.
I remember,
in my opinion.
I remember the first time I saw it, and when I realized she hadn't had the child yet, and that this wasn't a linear story, it was jumping around. And I went, wait, what? And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to watch it again, because I wanted to make sure I heard that. I mean, this isn't a story told on a linear scale. It starts off, you think it starts off that way, but you realize it's popping up all over the place.
It's not like a Tarantino movie where it's blatant,
right,
out of sequence. You know what I mean?
there's an Einstein had a theory about time travel as a joke. Well, not really as a joke, but a lot of people take it as a joke. He said you couldn't bounce back to see the pyramid being built. He honestly believed that you were going to be able to time travel. You'd be able to time travel in your own lifespan, and it would be like a circle, as opposed to one end, the ending and the beginning connecting. And I thought that when I saw this again, like the second time I saw it, that's the first thing I thought of. I'm like, this guy was reading some very deep Einstein stories.
Chang's writing is very it's technical.
Okay.
It's got a technical aspect to it.
Is he a sci-fi writer in general?
Yes,
okay.
But he also has a heavy background in physics.
Okay.
Right.
So I mean, you've got diagrams, like he's got like some real diagrams about refraction, light refraction, and things like that. As Jeremy Renner's trying to explain to Amy Adams, particular things. But it's one of those few books where I actually think the movie is better because the parts that he writes that are human about her and her daughter are unbelievably beautiful. The parts about the actual alien interactions are a little dry.
Okay.
Right.
They're a little dry. And I think that Villenueve was able to visualize it a lot better than, and that's just, I mean, there's like 10 or 12 stories in here. What's this called? Stories of Your Life and Others. There's one here just called Tower of Babylon and it's very beautiful, about these people that are trying to build a tower to heaven.
Okay.
And so that's beautiful. But here, where he starts to get into the science of the language, it gets kind of dry. But it's an interesting concept because you start to wonder, could a person handle that psychologically? Having these, because they must not seem like memories. You would probably think you were having some sort of psychotic break.
Right.
At first when this sort of thing happens, and I'm glad that I didn't catch it until the end because I enjoyed just watching it play out through the entirety of the movie. So yeah,
and giving credit where credit's due, since you have this picture up right now, this scene right here, you have a hard time seeing in science fiction movies a lot of the time. Amy Adams is being human, and she's reaching out with her hand to make that communication, and that's the first thing it does is reach out to. They realize that I mean, what does she say before they leave? Is when now that's reaching, that's communication.
That's a proper greeting.
That's a proper greeting. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. But that's the point in my head, and I think this is also the point of view of the way the director did it too.
I don't want to put people down, but I think it's one of those movies where someone could easily say, "Well, not a lot happened."
Right, and I said that in my description too. But I did because it's not shoot 'em up, little green men and lasers and shit like that. But I was so enthralled just what was on screen, watching her try to decipher what they're trying to say, while also dealing with like the paranoia of the government of the different countries. I love that. Like every time Forrest Whitaker is like pushing her. What if I can't do it? Well, then we'll go to the next guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then by the end of it, I think China? That's they're the first ones that are going to take action, like physical action against it. Yeah. And then we're air quotes, we're just like following suit, type of thing, because we're so afraid, because
it's like
we misinterpret it, and it's like when you do learn a foreign language, it all depends on dialect, and we misinterpret a word weapon for I don't remember what it really was, but it was tool.
Yeah.
And then when you hear weapon again, you are thinking these are going to be an attack. But again, it was a misinterpretation of a word.
When you were watching some of the docs on the special features, Villenueve said that this story assumes an intelligent and willing audience.
Yes.
which is what you need to be to enjoy something like this. Because if you think it's going to be the day that the earth stood still, you're in for a huge disappointment. And John and I were talking about this a little bit. We were talking about 10 Cloverfield Lane and the disappointment that people felt because it really wasn't a Cloverfield movie.
Right.
Right.
And so you assume your expectations or your assumptions aren't being met necessarily. But I think this is a much finer film.
And it goes.
Than
I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I said it's a much finer film than the others that we usually get in this genre. The closest I could probably compare it to would be Contact.
Right. And the one thing that you were talking about, and I forget the director's name. My apologies.
Villenueve.
Thank you. But he didn't dumb it down for everyone. And as he said, you were expecting intelligent people or smart people, not even smart, intelligent people to pay attention. The way it does, it made you pay attention.
Yes.
I also like to compare this to 2001. I've seen 2001 so many times, and for the life of me, I still don't know what they're saying at the end of that movie. But I will keep watching it. And that was the same way. If you look at it, brilliant visuals, not really a lot of action, but there were some, like an explosion in both movies and things like that.
Yeah, but no Jake Busey, thank God.
Yeah, but they were also a philosophy, about this. I love the fact that they're trying to communicate with the other aliens race, and they can't communicate with each other in this. The other countries, when they were beginning to panic, they weren't talking, they weren't sharing. All of a sudden, they weren't communicating.
Well, it's it's art imitating life. At what we've never been more connected to each other with technology, and like people, tell you all the time that they've never felt more isolated.
Yeah,
and everybody's depressed, or mental illness is like a sign of personal pride now. My anxiety, won't let me do this, that, or the other, and people don't talk to each other anymore. And,
like Carl Sagan in the 70s turned around and said, if an alien race appeared into the world, he always felt it would have been a unifying experience because the first time we wouldn't look at each other as countries, we were all Earthlings. And that was the term. And it's funny because somebody had mentioned that not too long ago. It's one of those it's aliens on the History Channel, type shows, one of those documentaries. And a guy goes, he mentioned what Carl Sagan said. And he goes, I don't think that would happen today. He goes, compared to how separated it is.
It just happened last week and nobody gave a shit.
Yeah.
It literally just happened last week. The government announced that, we have these things happening, and everybody was just like, well, what about Hunter Biden?
Yeah.
Can we get the Epstein list? How about that list? And you're just like,
I remember when they were going up into space with the
wait, hold on. Let me just,
sorry.
It assumes an intelligent and willing audience. And never, I don't think there have been, in my lifetime, have I ever seen people more unwilling.
Yeah.
Just generally, and more closed off, and more cynical, and more paranoid, and more narcissistic, than, because, we turn the internet into our id.
Yes.
It's just all the things we love and all the things we hate and all the things we fear, and nobody has any discussions, and nobody listens, and nobody asks any questions.
What have I been, Mike? What have I been telling you privately and on these streams? Civil conversation is dead because of the internet, in my opinion. Remember, I maybe a lot of you guys like to pick on me because I'm the youngest of the bunch, but I was born in '81. I didn't have internet growing up. I actually read a book. I went outside. I did have my Nintendo, but I was done after like an hour. Then I went and played some football and shit like that.
Yeah.
Nowadays, like I think it was last week when we were talking Fifth Element, they would want a selfie with that fucking alien before wanting to learn about it. You know what I mean? That's all that matters nowadays. We're so detached from reality.
Right.
The internet has given everyone a voice when pretty much now no one should have one.
And what people have failed to realize is that the internet is a virtual reality.
Mm-hmm.
It's but they've bought so hard into this VR that I can be whoever I want in this this VR, rather than who you actually are when you step outside the door. And you feel like you're having a panic attack or whatever the fuck it is that is going on. So I think Sagan would be very fucking disappointed.
Just imagine the generation from born in 2010 till now.
Oh, the Gen Zs?
Yeah, imagine them going 2 days without the internet.
Fuck. My next door neighbor has 2 kids, an 8th and a 9th grader. They would die.
Like I look at, and then I've when my daughter, she's 11, I tease her. I said, well, I'm done paying for the internet, that type of thing. And of course, her life is over. But then I tell her, I said, you don't know how I was growing up. The only, honestly, and I said, the only thing I would miss out if I didn't have internet is I wouldn't be able to stream with my buddies. But you know what? I've got books. I can go outside. I've got, I can write. I've got physical media. All this stuff I don't need the internet for. But with this generation, you shut that off, life's over. What's the point of going on living? You know what I mean?
I had my buddy. He took his family to go see the new Mission Impossible, and the son didn't like it because the AI was the villain. They're convinced that AI is like this absolute good, and I'm just like,
oh God,
you're just like, what? I didn't like it. I didn't like that they made AI the villain. It's like, shut up, kid.
There's a guy I know who refers to AI as Alfred Initio. And I went, what? And he goes, well, I'm going to give him a name. What the hell? And I started laughing because he's saying the same thing. The way they talk about it, it's like their best friend. Oh, you mean Alfred?
Yeah.
Or Albert is what he says, anything that starts with the AI. And it's a shame because it goes right back to what this movie's about.
Here's this meme I found the other day.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, at this time when we should be, I think that's why the few people like Rogan, are such a success, because he just has conversations. These podcasts where people just talk and listen to each other are the one. I think that's what people are starving.
And the thing about Rogan, he doesn't always agree with his guests either, but they can have that conversation. That it might get a little heated, when politics are brought in or stuff like that, but they're still sitting down face to face talking. This isn't like, me and you, Mike, when we go on Twitter and kind of poke the bear with the horror community and, talk about how shitty Michael Myers and Scream movies are. And then they have a fucking meltdown. Like I posted something today. They're still bitching about Halloween Ends. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, that movie's been out a fucking year. Who cares?
How the fuck did you not see it coming, you dummy?
But my point, like they're still complaining about it a year later. Go get a girlfriend or, read a book or something.
Blow up a doll.
Yeah. Something.
Shit, man. It's
what I liked, this character, the Amy Adams character, is interesting too, in the sense. Let's get back to the movie a little bit.
Sure.
How dare we?
She doesn't have much.
Right.
She doesn't. She goes to work. She goes home. House is empty. There's not much.
Right.
So, I sort of understand in a way, she gets plucked up and grabbed up in this thing and wrapped up, and maybe she sees this as her only opportunity.
You could tell that right when she walks into the university classroom. She's she's just kind of like, okay, it's Tuesday. All right, let's get this shit over with. Just the way she talks to her class, the way she unzips her bag. It's just like she's been doing this for so long. There's nothing there anymore.
Well, you see, in the next day, she's the only one that goes in. She's the very next day, and that's how she meets Forrest Whitaker. She's the only person in the whole fucking building.
Yep.
Like, there's nothing else for her to do.
Right.
So she's a very interesting case. I'm not a fan of Amy Adams as Lois Lane, but I like her in this.
It depends on the movie. Like I think she's okay as Lois. She's not great. But if you put her in something like The Fighter with Christian Bale and Mark Wahlberg, she's really good in that. Or you know what? She's got some range because she's a nasty, like she's a pretty woman I think she's a really pretty woman, but she is disgusting and nasty looking in The Fighter, and she's not a good person. Or she's got the range where she can be in like a Disney movie. My wife and daughter, they love this movie where it's called Enchanted, where she's this fairy tale princess sucked into the real world type of thing. And she's, oblivious to everything because she thinks it's, like she's Cinderella or something. She doesn't realize that people are assholes in New York City type of thing. So she's got some range. She can be very funny, very dramatic.
And I think it's go ahead, Mike.
No, I was going to say, go ahead. If you're still talking about Amy Adams, go ahead.
Right. No, I love the fact that her character in the movie, for as many science fiction films that I have seen, they had that Jeremy Renner was the astrophysicist. They never had a linguist. I was racking my brain saying, is there any real movie where they brought in a linguist? Somebody who approaches a situation from that aspect. And I thought that as a story-wise, that was an interesting twist.
I don't think so.
In the 50s, it was like you have a guy who's in the professor who was in the army, but he's an astrophysicist or a rocket, whatever, so he could be the action figure. And no, this was different. This was a whole different spin. Yeah. Not having an intellectual take the lead, because even, you have Jeff Goldblum in Independence Day.
Right.
Who's the intellectual. But in this, it was like, she was doing stuff and breaking the rules to, get what needed to be done. And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that as a character,
I like that they didn't portray the military as the bad guys.
Yeah.
Right. So, I liked that. And
usually the military is almost always the bad guy.
Yes. The military was not the villain, and neither were the aliens. No matter how scary looking they were. They were there for peaceful reasons.
Right. If there was, I'm not exactly sure that there was a bad guy in this. I mean, you had you had the mutiny,
right?
But it was interesting to see, and they didn't focus on it very much, and I appreciated that they stayed, within the confines of the conversation. But the way that society was handling things.
Right.
And that one guy is talking, who ends up leading the mutiny, is talking to his wife, and she's like crying her eyes out.
Yeah.
My daughter saying, all the monsters are going to, kill you. There's, this real, almost sort of paralyzing fear.
You hear on a news report, you got to listen for it. But I think a parish set itself on fire. Its church on fire because they thought it was like the end of days or something like that.
Yeah, the religious hysteria starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the unbalanced, people sort of, you put that pressure on them, and then, they kind of fold, that sort of thing. I don't have a picture here, unfortunately, of Forrest Whitaker, but I thought he was really great. And you're right, he was pushing her, but the military was fair. The way that they portrayed the U.S., because it's usually the military and the government are always the assholes here. Even the Chinese, I thought that they were making, like, the way that the Chinese weren't using a dialogue, they were playing mahjong.
Correct.
Right? They were using symbols, and so Amy Adams figures out, well, wait a minute, that involves winners and losers.
Right.
It's not the same thing.
But she
it was an honest mistake.
You give somebody a hammer, they're going to think everything's a nail.
Yeah.
Right.
And one thing I loved I've loved Forrest Whitaker since like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. You know what I mean? That's a great car. Don't fuck with it. That type of thing.
Yeah.
But what I liked about this, it was good seeing him in a sci-fi movie again. Not just like Star Wars. I don't know if you guys have seen that sci-fi movie from the 90s called Species, where he was an empath.
Yeah.
It was nice seeing him being a low-key, he's a good guy in this movie too, but he's this low-key guy who just wants to assess the situation. And that's how he was to he was to a lesser extent in this than he was in Species, but it just reminded me of that character he played too, because he was an empath. He can deal with what the alien's feeling, type of thing. So it was just kind of cool seeing him in something like this again.
Well, like in the scene where he was talking to Amy Adams and he says, "I got to go through to a room full of men."
Mm-hmm.
And the first question they're going to ask is also the last question that we're going to ask, what does that mean? Type deal. And I love that.
It was, how can this be used against us?
How can this be used against us? And the way he did that, and I'm going, he was exactly what he was. It was, boom, I'm here to defend or whatever has to be done. And I love that. I love that when he pulled up and she asked him about Sanskrit.
Mm-hmm.
They asked the guy about Sanskrit and goes, "Pack your bags. I'll need 20 minutes. You got 10."
He was straight, to the point, but he wasn't a dick about it. You know what I mean? He wasn't this typical.
He was being a guy who had to be in charge.
Yeah, he wasn't the yelling in your face, "Let's go get this done" type of thing. He's like, "No, this is how it is. Mm-hmm. What am I going to tell my superiors? I need an answer."
I mean, I think anybody that had done that would have been completely out of. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't have fit here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everything in this is very muted.
Mm-hmm. Right. Even the look of the spaceship.
Yeah, the look of the spaceship. The alien interaction. There's no jump scares to speak of, although that one thing did startle you. Mm-hmm. It's not an action movie. It's almost is like a fantasy film, or like a sci-fi fantasy.
Right.
Where aliens come to teach us their language because they see that in 3,000 years they're going to need our help.
Yeah, that's what I love.
They see it's going to take us that long to be ready to help us.
And that's what I love about
the next evolutionary step.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's what I love is they can see that far into the future, at least. Right. We don't know how much further, but at least 3,000 years into the future.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I thought that was just like a cool concept. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mike. Seriously.
I was going to say there's no darkness to speak of. There's tension. Mm-hmm. There's tension, but it's just a very beautiful story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tragic.
Yeah.
Right. But it is it's within all of this, overwhelming sort of sensory overload. At the core of it is an extremely human story.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it works.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would just be the day that the earth stood still.
Right.
There's so many just little scenes that got me smirking and smiling, because she's trying to teach them, once she teaches the word human, then she's got to teach them what this means and then what that means. Right. And it's just little scenes of Ian, Jeremy Renner, it's Ian walks, and it's just him walking back and forth, just little things that got me smirking, and it was just so much fun. And what I like about this movie is less than 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's not short attention span, shit flying at you, like we said, shoot 'em up type of stuff.
Right.
It is, like I said, and maybe the wrong way to say it is nothing happens, because a lot does, but let's just say, comparing this to Star Wars, you know what I mean? You got to have lasers and shit every 30 seconds.
Right. Well,
I was never in a 2-hour movie, never bored for 1 minute, because this story, these characters had me so enthralled, and I wanted to know where this was going. And the more we saw these aliens, the communication, I'm like, okay, where is this going next? And I know something's going to happen, because I know this isn't going to end good, or something like that's going to happen. One of these countries is going to kind of jump the gun, and then where are we going to go with these characters?
Mm-hmm. I think we should approach it saying, instead of saying nothing happens, we should say there isn't a lot of, flagrant action, but stuff is happening.
Right.
When Ian comes out and calls them Abbott and Costello,
and
Amy Adams smirks.
Yeah.
That was the first time I think she liked him. Type deal. I mean, it was things like when she told the story about the kangaroo.
Yeah.
And Captain Cook. I laughed my ass off at it again when I saw it this afternoon. When she said, but I made that all up. But it's And it's stuff like that. You cared about the people who were driving the story.
Correct.
And, including the aliens type deal. Even these CGI guys, with her reaching out and everything else, you cared about them. You gave a damn.
Mm-hmm.
And it really pulled you in.
Yeah.
And you didn't have to be like a little green thing eating Reese's Pieces or,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not bagging on E.T. Loved it.
Right.
But it was more of like, you actually started giving a damn. I'll clean my language.
This film bridges the gap into cinema, which is different than what the average sci-fi first contact movie, falls under. I would argue most of them fall under entertainment. This is not that. Me. If someone were to say nothing happened, I'd probably just say, "Get the fuck out of here."
Right. That's why I said maybe that's the wrong term, but you knew
it's
what I
absolutely, but within the context of the three of us,
right?
Right.
It's just it goes back to what he said. It assumes an intelligent and willing audience.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Instead of saying nothing happens, let's go to what we always bring John up with this. With his work on the stage. Less is more. Less is definitely more with this.
It's not even. I don't think there's less here.
Okay.
It's just. Because there's over like like. I don't know if anybody. John, you were here for this. Eric, you weren't. This was one of when we did the top 5 soundtracks. This was one of the soundtracks. Got the score and the soundtrack from this is fantastic. From Johan Johansson. The score works. The effects work. The acting works. There's something going on in every single scene here.
Yeah.
It's just not an action movie.
Right.
It's something that it involves thinking.
Yeah.
It's something that involves thinking. It's something that involves dialogue. You have to actually listen because you're just not waiting for the next blast 'em shot. This, that, or the other. I think this is a top-notch movie.
I think it makes the audience have to invest in the movie.
Yes.
Clint Eastwood used to say that a lot about his movies. I'm not dumbing down a film for the audience to keep up. They'll invest in it. If you're telling a good story, they're going to invest in it. And it also is, which we say on this podcast a lot, it's a good story. And you got the right people to tell that story.
And look at we've been go back and watch this episode later. I think the conversation we're having now based on this movie, that's what a movie is supposed to do.
Yeah.
When a movie is this great, I'm not going to show my whole hand yet until we get to the rating system, but when a movie is this good, this great, and it can get you having a conversation like we've had, it makes you think about, the choice about, telling Jeremy Renner and having the baby, we started that out, or, just any other type of conversation we've had. That's what films are supposed to do.
Right.
It's water cooler talk the next day. Hey, I saw this movie. And if you find the right person who likes cinema, you know what I mean?
Right.
For lack of a better term, you can have that type of a conversation if you find the person who looks at a film this way. And that shows how good from beginning to end this movie is. This is one of those movies, get rid of the fucking phone, sit down.
Yep.
Everybody can spare 2 hours in their life. Sit down, watch this movie from beginning to end with no distractions. And I will be very surprised if you don't really enjoy this movie.
I would be very surprised if they didn't want to watch it again. Not right away like I did, but they'll probably want to watch it again because it makes you question. I mean, I've seen this movie several times, and I just saw it again this afternoon, and there's a whole bunch of questions still running in my head.
I texted Mike immediately after I finished the movie, and I told him that ending. I got to process this, because that's a type of question you don't think you have to process, whether you're a parent and being married or not, in a first contact movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's an out of left field, curveball or however you want to say it, and that is great because it engages that conversation with like I'm having with you two guys right now.
I remember the days when we would go to movies. The Christmas Shore Mall used to have that movie theater, And if we caught a really good movie, a few of us would be sitting in the room like they're cleaning up, and we're still talking about it because we wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, oh my God, did you see the head get blown off?
Right.
You know, it was that whole style of where it was going and what it was this. We had one guy said, dude, you can't stay here unless you help clean up. We got up and started picking up popcorn boxes for the guy just to keep
nice.
talking about it.
Yeah.
Because it was that quiet type room. This was that type of movie.
Yep, we always did dinner and a movie, but the thing is, you know, lots of people go to dinner first and then the movie.
Right.
We always did dinner afterwards, so we can have that 90 minutes to talk about the film.
Exactly.
And that's what pubs are for also.
Very true.
You know,
yeah,
you just
and it is nice because
wings and have some beers and talk shit about the movie.
That's what's nice because my house is walking distance from the movie theater, and I got 2 bars just down the road. So, so when I'm done having my drinks and my talk, I can walk home safely too. You know what I mean?
Indeed. So, I mean,
yeah.
I lost my train of thought there. Yeah, I mean, it's just. This is the point. This is the reason that I talk about movies in the first place. You know, and it isn't obviously it isn't always possible to have a movie of this caliber.
Right.
Even with movies that I typically talk about, which are movies that most people aren't talking about. But you know, to be at this level, they are few and far between within the parameters of the genres that this channel will cover.
Right.
You know, there aren't that many.
Right.
But yeah, this is why. This is why. So yeah, here we are.
And there's things that like when I did research for this, they were talking about how everything had a circle involvement. Like when they walked, they were almost walking in a circle. And this, you know, the ships, the director made as a circle, and he didn't like it. He changed it to make it a little bit oblong, so it would give it a little. The whole concept of it and time being a circle. And I love that because the way we're even having this conversation, it's like a nice round. You know, Mike says something, I say something, you say something. I'm apologizing if I'm stepping on people because I'm excited about talking about it type deal. But it's that sense of, you know, there's no beginning and no end type deal. And that's what I kind of really liked about it the most. The way they viewed time, you know, in this.
All right. Is there anything, because we started at the end. So is there anything that we have not covered in this film that you would like to discuss?
The only thing, and this isn't going to knock my score, the only thing I wish they would have done, I wish we would have known what Amy Adams said to
General Shang?
The general. Because all we knew, I mean, I get it because it was like his wife's last words. So, I mean, that fit with the story perfectly. I just kind of wish we would have known maybe a little bit, but I'm also okay with because of the way it was handled. You know what I mean? The army was after her. Jeremy Renner stood in front of her like a human shield type of thing, and that was again a perfect use of the time travel. Well, not time travel, but you know the jumps in time story wise motif. Because she's seeing that vision in the future, and you know she's remembering, you know, she's meeting him in the future, and you know you helped me not make a decision. And what I did like, I just thought of this.
Yeah, you're going to talk about what I think you're going to talk about. Yeah, go ahead.
She sometimes gets we're seeing these future visions. She kind of gets jolted into reality. Like I like when she's remembering some of this stuff. Like she wakes up. And she's with her daughter by the lake. Mom, help! You know, put her foot into the boot. So I kind of liked how it seemed like she was just jolted, like she, you know, when she was in the future type of thing.
The only thing that genuinely freaked me out a little bit was when we get to the part where she meets General Shang in the future, and General Shang says, "You called me on my cell phone," and she's like, "I don't have your number." And then in the future, he shows her the fucking number. So she can, like
call.
in the past, she's going to have the number now. And I was like, Fuck, man.
And that's how I
Yeah.
got the
You
word.
really just,
And,
yeah, that's how she got the
Yeah.
fucking number.
yeah,
Like on the spot there, he's like, I think
Yeah.
you're going to need this.
yeah.
right.
You know, or something. And I was like,
Because he realized
Fuck.
that he probably by that time was getting to do what she was doing,
Mm-hmm.
and
Possibly,
said, "Oh,
yeah.
And I know, yeah, because I loved that, and I was like, and that's pure science fiction. That was a leap of faith for the average moviegoer to follow along.
And I just thought of it now. Maybe because it's a long conversation she's having with the general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she's obviously not just saying his wife's last words. Now that I'm thinking
Yeah.
about it, because it's a long conversation. Maybe he's asking how you got my personal number. Maybe she's just telling him flat out what she's seen and learned from these aliens. And, down the road in however many years, you're going to show me your personal number. So that might trigger him in the future to show her that number so she can call him and stop this. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think no matter what it was, you would have been. It might have been disappointing if it was the wrong word. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Citizen Kane, but when I found out that Rosebud was a sled, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
It was like I went, "Are you kidding me?" And I don't know why. The first time I saw it, I mean, I understood it. Missing the simpler life, you probably would have wanted to stay there. Blah 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 blah. That's great.
Right.
But I'm like, that was such a weird word. If they didn't show, it's if you don't hear the word, you just see his reaction to it. Then she got it right.
oh,
there he goes.
There I am.
Sorry about that.
Aha! Michael's going to stop me from talking on this podcast.
Damn it! That's enough. Jesus, Mary and Joseph.
But you know what? That shows how good this movie is because, just by having this conversation, it just made me think when Mike brought up, he's showing her the number. That just made me think maybe that's what she's saying in Mandarin. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all into interpretation. That's what's great about this film. It's the conversations it brings out.
I'm actually kind of jealous because you're going to go watch it again sometime. And I'm damn, because the second time is when I started getting more stuff and more questions. It is one of those movies that make you think.
I should have mentioned this at the beginning. This movie is currently available on Pluto TV. You can watch it for free. You don't have to, pay. I mean, I own my own copy, so that's different. And I definitely think it's worthwhile. But it is available on Pluto TV, and you can, just bring it up any old time and watch it. So,
and speaking as a broke-ass poor man, yes, I could watch it on Pluto TV for free, but I'd be willing to pay for it. This is how good the movie is.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. All right, I think we're at the point in the stream where we rate the film. This channel has a rating system that goes from 0 all the way to 5. So it goes 0, 0.5, 1, 1.5, all the way to 5. So 0, for example, would be I'd rather eat someone else's chewed food than watch this movie again. All the way to 5, which is this is cinema. This is the destination. This is the entire reason that we're here in the first place. John, what would you give Denis Villeneuve's Arrival?
Because I rarely give it, I'm giving it a 5. One of the things, because I was thinking about that when I was going to the rating system, and I'm like, I felt it was a 5 and everything else, but even after this conversation that we had, and this was a genuine, I got excited again. And if talking about it has that same effect too, this is it. This is a 5.
I remember when we covered Midsommar, it was me, Eric, and Bill. And I think Eric said at the end, I needed to talk this movie through. Because we were just so fucking irate by the time it was over with. But you're like, we talked about it for like an hour, and now I can sort of objectively, sort of go through it. And I was a little concerned, that, it didn't meet expectations necessarily because you didn't know what to expect.
Right.
Okay, so 5 for John. Eric, what do you got for Villeneuve's Arrival?
Dude, like I said, I'd never heard of this movie. We started the podcast. I had to make sure it wasn't the stupid ass Charlie Sheen movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you should have known
And
that.
I sat down 2 hours, and like I said, I was enthralled. Love the characters, love the look, the simplicity.
Question: Did you do it with headphones?
I did not,
That's you got it. Okay.
but I will because, like John said, I'll just flat out say 5.
Mhm.
But like John said earlier, you know me, I'm a physical media guy. I can stream this anytime I want to, but you never know when it's going to get taken off streaming. This is a movie I will want to revisit many times. So there's going to be one day I'm going to put it in my laptop and listen to it with headphones because, like, when we discuss like the Exorcist TV show, that helps out a lot with like the background and stuff like that. But 100% 5. This is such a good movie from beginning to end. I absolutely loved it.
I am going with 5. I can't think of anything wrong with it. I can't find anything wrong with it. And again, it comes back to anticipates an intelligent and willing audience. So I think there are some movies that actually pressure the audience to rise to the occasion, to understand what it is that they're viewing. And it's like that John Waters quote, you know, if you have to have good taste
to understand bad.
To understand bad taste. You know, the irony of celebrating bad taste. If you only have bad taste, you don't get it.
Right.
You know, so I think there are some things that are just a fucking litmus test. You know, and you know, like this conversation, you know, about Halloween. Like it's a fucking litmus test. Like you don't get it. You don't get it. These people don't get it. Okay, you know, I'm sure they'll find people, you know, whatever. But just trash, just trash. This is, you know, just. No, I didn't mean the people were trash. I mean,
I know exactly.
The movie is just fucking trash, and so they don't get it. This, you either get it or you don't.
I love it when you dismiss a movie. You got this perfect hand wave, trash. It's boom. I love that. Mike, what was the quote the director said again?
You have to have good taste in order to celebrate the irony of bad taste.
Oh no, about the willing audience.
Oh yeah, it what did he say? It assumes an intelligent and willing audience.
American Werewolf in New Jersey. It assumes an intelligent and willing audience.
That's why I only talked to like 4 fucking people because, you know, everybody else is talking about, you know, whatever, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. In New Jersey, there's probably about 4 intelligent people.
Hey, I'm in Illinois, so.
You're doing all right. You're doing all right. That's one.
There we go.
All right, so 3 5s. What more is there to say? Anybody got Eric? You got anything to plug?
YouTube channel. Hey, Internet, Eric here. Speaking of trash, I'm done with Shitty Shark Week, and I was planning on taking a week off to recuperate. I'm so glad this movie here cleansed my fucking palate of that garbage. Thank you, Mike. But I was planning on taking a whole week off. I do think maybe later in the week, what's today? Maybe Friday, as of this recording, I might just do a little video about Paul Rubens, you know, passing, just my growing up with him, my experiences with his comedy, and then like the experiences I shared with my daughter because she became a fan. So it's just something personal because I was a fan. And then after that, I'm going to, like I said before, I'm going to jump in the Rocky franchise and the Rambo franchise because I want to talk some Stallone. So
there you go.
Don't forget those Mission Impossibles.
Oh, that's going to happen too, my friend. But yeah, YouTube channel, Hey Internet, Eric here. And then you can follow me on Twitter, same name. But I'm usually there poking the bear, pissing off the horror community, which is a very, very fun thing to do. Mike can attest to that.
There you go.
The movie's just fucking trash. Trash, bro. It's just fucking trash. It really is. It's just fucking trash.
Sorry, that's very funny.
No, I mean, it's just fucking true. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
What other way is there to see it? This, for me, we are in the month of August, and the I mean, the summer's fucking going by pretty quickly. I mean,
Mhm.
we're definitely in the second half again, but we still have a number of movies left to cover.
Yeah.
Let's see. We've got The Last Man on Earth, the original
Mhm.
Vincent Price. We can do that on Pluto. We've got Dead Again,
Mhm.
Mad Max, and we've got The Green Knight.
The Green Knight.
We've got The Green Knight. The Green Knight's another fucking piece of beautiful cinema.
That's not the one from the 80s, right? With Sean Connery?
No, that's the one with Dev Patel.
That's what I thought. Okay. No, that's the one I
Dev
saw.
Patel.
I saw.
Oh, no, First Night.
You're thinking of First Night with King Arthur?
No. In the 80s, after Highlander, they did The Green Knight, and Sean Connery was the Green Knight. And I forget who it was. It was like somebody Van Cleef, a long blonde hair guy with muscles who wanted to be Arnold Schwarzenegger but didn't have the acting talent. Came out in 86. I swear to God. I watched it only because Sean Connery is a riot.
Sword of the Valiant, 1984.
Yeah,
is what it says.
Yeah, but it's the Green Knight story.
Sean Connery is the Green Knight. Peter Cushing's in it.
Mm-hmm.
And looks like no one else that I know of.
Yeah. It was
Oh,
really
John Rhys Davies is in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very young John Rhys Davies.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get to The Green Knight next week.
All right, cool.
Let's get to The Green Knight. And I'll
really
think
like
of one
that one,
other.
too.
Yeah, I'll think of one other we can throw out there just for shits and giggles. But The Green Knight, Eric, you in for that one?
If it's on Wednesday.
Yeah, let's make it Wednesday then.
Let's make it Wednesday.
Wednesday, The Green Knight, that's available on Tubi.
Okay.
Or not
available on Tubi.
Add it to my queue when we're done.
All right. So I think that brings it to a close. Oh, John, did you have anything you wanted to plug? I apologize.
No, it was the same thing I was talking about 2 nights ago. It hasn't come through yet, so until I find out, I don't want to judge.
Not you. I'm talking to the cat. Sorry. All right. That brings it to a close. My thanks to Eric from Hey Internet, Eric here, and to John K. Alvarez, who has finally arrived. We will be back at the very least next Wednesday. We're here on American Werewolf EU. This is our backup channel, or my backup channel. And yeah, that's where we're covering these long things. I'll be doing other short things on the other channel, more modern stuff. There's a lot coming up, actually. Ahsoka is about to drop. The Last Voyage of the Demeter comes out next Friday. That's going to be a good one. So I'm looking forward to giving that a review. And yeah, still there's a lot coming up. So we'll see you all in the next video.
Cheers.
Hasta luego.